Thank you, members. Moving to question time, but Mr Coe, before I call you as Leader of the Opposition, can I just let the members know that in the gallery we have the WA Speaker, the Honourable Peter Watson, Speaker from the Legislative Assembly. Welcome, and the Sergeant of Arms, Ayla McPhail. So, welcome to ACT. So, questions without notice, Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I have a question for the Chief Minister and Minister for Economic Development. Chief Minister, when did the LDA start negotiating with the CFMEU or the tradies over the Dixon land deals?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, the government put out an expression of interest to the marketplace, Madam Speaker, some years ago. I will need to check the exact date that expression of interest was put forward, but it was an open process inviting expressions of interest from all interested parties. And
if you had to join Section 72, would you like to sell it?
And Madam Speaker...
It is question time, Chief Minister.
Indeed, yes, Madam Speaker. On a day like today, when the carping negative Leader of the Opposition has nothing new to talk about, he will rake over the coals, Madam Speaker. Show once again his pathological hatred of the union movement, and just mention the letters. Just mention the letters CFMEU, and his head nearly explodes, Madam Speaker. But in relation to the process, Madam Speaker, the government, through a Dixon master planning process, undertook an extensive period of consultation. There was a territory plan variation. New supermarkets are coming to Dixon, and that, Madam Speaker, is a very clear government priority.
Supplementary, Mr Coe.
Chief Minister, was Section 72 involved in that expression of interest or tender, and was it treated as an unsolicited proposal by the ACT government?
Chief Minister.
The government's approach to the market related to the sale of a government car park between the current Woolworths site in Dixon and the Tradies Club.
Supplementary, Ms Lee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Chief Minister, were the deals approved by Cabinet or yourself as the relevant minister, or by the LDA?
Chief Minister.
Well, the LDA, of course, runs the commercial real estate, or ran the commercial real estate activities of the government, and ultimately, of course, Cabinet endorsed a process of an expression of interest for the site, and also undertook a similar process associated with the release of another government-owned block for the purposes of the new supermarket, Madam Speaker.
Questions without notice, Mr Steele.
Madam Speaker, my question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, what was today's exciting announcement by Lonely Planet regarding Canberra?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do thank Mr Steele, and in case for the question, and in case those, oh well, there we go. So at the first opportunity, Madam Speaker, at the first opportunity to talk our city up, where do the miserable lot who sit opposite, where do they go? They go on a Detroit bashing exercise, do they? Well, there we go. There we go.
Do you want to resume your seat, Chief Minister? Stop the clock, please. Members. That's better. Chief Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So it is very exciting news for Canberra's tourism industry that we have received the highest award ever for an Australian city in the Lonely Planet top 10 cities in the world to visit for 2018. This will be a great launching pad for the next phase in Canberra's tourism development. The tourism industry is heading towards a $2.5 billion annual contribution to the Territory's economy, employing more than 16,000 Canberrans. So to put that in perspective, Madam Speaker, that's the Commonwealth Public Service is about 60,000 Canberrans. The ACT government employs around 20,000 Canberrans, 16,000 in the tourism industry, and this is only going to grow. This recognition, Madam Speaker, is as a result of a decade of transformative work. Canberra has fundamentally changed from the small insular country town that it was in the 1960s and 70s, and there is no way that the Canberra of that era would have received this sort of international recognition. Canberra is changing for the better. We are the happiest, healthiest, longest living, best educated and wealthiest Australians. This city is the best place in the world to live, and it's being recognised now as one of the best places in the world to visit. And the only people today, Madam Speaker, who are negative are the Canberra Liberals.
Your time has expired. Supplementary, Mr Steele.
Minister, what does this announcement mean for Canberra?
Chief Minister.
It means our city is getting the recognition that it deserves, Madam Speaker, and it's been incredibly encouraging across the dozens of media interviews that have been undertaken today by myself and various spokespeople for Visit Canberra, the very positive reaction across the nation and internationally to this recognition. Yes, there are cynics. Yes, there are cynics and critics. Some of them reside in this city and sit on that side of the chamber, Madam Speaker. Some
Mr.
people who would purport to represent this city are utilising this little period, the last few minutes, to talk this city down. And that is very disappointing, Madam Speaker. But as we have observed before, there is nothing more miserable than the Canberra Liberals. We will be relentlessly positive about Canberra, Madam Speaker, relentlessly positive about this city, its transformation, its tourism sector and the incredibly hard work that has been rewarded in our tourism and hospitality industry. We are repositioning Canberra. We're repositioning it nationally and internationally, implementing progressive policies that are being recognised around the country and around the world. And this recognition today will be a fantastic boost to Canberra's tourism industry. And I would encourage everyone, even the miserable cynics on the other side, to get behind our city just once in your life. Get behind Canberra.
So, before I call Miss Orr, the entertainment level is a little bit high. Can we all constrain ourselves on the opposition benches just a tad? There's a supplementary coming from Ms Orr. Do you have a point of...
Madam Speaker, if the Minister, in this case the Chief Minister, in responding to questions, is going to essentially taunt the opposition with comments like miserable cynics and so on, I think that there is a level of parliamentary behaviour that's expected in an answer as well.
Mr Hanson, resume your seat. Ms Orr, do you have your supplementary question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Chief Minister, what can visitors to Canberra expect in 2018?
With the level of silence, members.
Thank
Chief
you.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, look, a significant program of world-class events. The Cartier exhibition at the National Gallery is a world exclusive and is the biggest collection ever been seen in Australia. Hyperreal, which is underway now at the Gallery, will continue over the summer period. Songlines at the National Museum is the first exhibition of its kind. A very significant event next year being the 100-year commemorations at the Australian War Memorial, the end of the First World War. There is no doubt that the dawn service on Anzac Day here in Canberra next year will be a very significant event. There's more and better sporting and cultural content than ever before. Big Bash League, of course, Canberra's first cricket test match at Manuka Oval, and a range of events to celebrate our region's fantastic coffee, food and wine, the Truffle Festival, Farm Gate Tales, a very successful comedy festival, and of course Canberra's LGBTIQ Pride event, the Spring Out Festival, will be even bigger in 2018. Visitors to Canberra will enjoy a wonderful series of events through 2018, as will Canberrans who participate in their hundreds of thousands in the city's great events, like Floriade, like Enlighten, like the National Multicultural Festival. It's no wonder that this city is the best place in Australia to live and the best place in the world to live, and it's fantastic to see that recognition today.
Questions without notice. Mr Wall.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And my question is to the Minister for Economic Development. Minister, in question time yesterday, the 24th of October, your colleague Mr Gentleman said this in relation to an outstanding payment from the CFMEU for a car park as part of the land swap with the LDA, and I quote, "It is a matter for economic development to deal with. It is a matter for economic development to deal with, and they are dealing with that." End quote. Minister, when is the CFMEU due to pay the $3.2 million owing to the Territory for the car park next to the Dixon Tradies Club?
Minister for Economic
When
Development.
it takes possession of the car park, Madam Speaker.
Supplementary, Mr Wong.
Minister, will the CFMEU be able to stay rent-free in the building that the ACT government owns after the 42-month grace period has expired?
Minister for Economic Development.
No, Madam Speaker.
Supplementary, Mr Parton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Is the CFMEU allowed to sublease part of the building?
Minister for Economic Development.
I'll need to check the terms of their arrangements in relation to that matter.
Questions without notice. Ms Lakuta.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Transport, Canberra and City Services and relates to guidelines about what can be planted on residential nature strips. In July 2016, draft guidelines were released with a tentative final release date of the 1st of July 2017. Can you please update the Assembly on the timelines for the final verge gardening guidelines and what, if any, changes have been made as a result of ACAT deliberations on public unleased territory land?
Minister for Transport and City Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank Ms Lakuta for the question and note too that there has indeed been a delay in producing the final nature strip guidelines, and that is because of some considerations by ACAT. I can't recall them immediately on the floor of the chamber, but I'll take the question on notice and provide a follow-up to Ms Lakuta.
Supplementary, Ms Lakuta.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What was the community feedback on the consultation, both from the online survey and other workshops?
Minister for Transport and Territory Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I recall that it was very mixed, as we often find in this particular portfolio, for many people that wish to see and have the opportunity to further develop their nature strips. There were also people that quite vehemently didn't want to see nature strips developed. My understanding of the work that TCCS have done in the meantime has been to find the right balance between allowing people to use nature strips productively in particular for vegetable growing and in particular suburbs of Canberra. That's something that people are very, very keen to do. And there's a general view that that could be a useful, productive way for people to produce their own food on a nature strip. But of course, community safety, the protection of assets which lie underneath the ground and also on public land within the nature strip is the balance that TCCS have been trying to find. And I have asked them to find the right balance so that we can allow a little bit more to happen on nature strips while maintaining community safety and the amenity of each suburb as well. I understand that I expect to see those in the next month or so.
Questions without notice. Mr Parton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, it's reported that 84 CFMEU personnel are currently in court facing 896 alleged contraventions following over $10 million in penalties that have been awarded against the union. Federal judges have called the CFMEU the most recidivist corporate offender in Australian history. Former Labor PM Bob Hawke has stated, "It's just appalling, I wouldn't tolerate it." Another former Labor Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, said that Labor should sever ties with the CFMEU, given the evidence of corruption, bullying and law-breaking, stating he cannot abide a structure that gives trade union-based factions majority control of the party, either on policy or on personnel. Chief Minister, will you heed the calls of your federal leaders and sever your government's ties with the CFMEU?
Chief Minister.
Well, the inference in the preamble, the extensive preamble of Mr Parton's question relates to matters for the Labor Party. The government does not have formal ties with the CFMEU.
What is that MOU?
The MOU is with Unions ACT.
Supplementary. Mr Hanson. Mr Hanson. Mr Hanson. You have a colleague on the floor who's seeking to ask a supplementary. Mr Parton, wait for the call. But no, you have it now.
Thank you. Chief Minister, what control does the CFMEU have in your government's policy or personnel?
Chief Minister.
It has, like any stakeholder organisation, the right to express to express a view on public. It has the right to express a view on public policy. The government doesn't necessarily have to agree with that view, Madam Speaker. Noting the catcalls from across the chamber, Madam Speaker, I think it's an important opportunity to be very clear in relation to the rights and responsibilities of stakeholder organisations. And all stakeholder organisations have both rights and responsibilities in public policy debate, Madam Speaker. And those rights and responsibilities apply equally across the political divide, Madam Speaker. But what I need to be very clear about is that the government's policy is determined by the government, by members in this place, implementing the platform that we took to the people of Canberra at the 2016 election, a platform informed by a democratic process within our political party. And it is no different, Madam Speaker, on the other side of politics, except you've got some more shady donors who hide in the dark, Madam Speaker, or who seek to influence public policy by way of the most significant donations in the history of the Territory, including those seeking to influence policy on CTP, which was very clear by the $90,000 donation of one individual to the Liberal Party in the last election.
Supplementary.
Madam Speaker, my supplementary question is to the Chief Minister. Why is your government about to legislate to force the people of the ACT to enter an agreement with the worst recidivist corporate offender in Australian history, the CFMEU?
Chief Minister.
This government is sticking up for the rights of working people. And that's something that you lot will never understand. You will never understand because you are conservative, anti-union individuals who see no role for organised labour in our society.
Mrs Dunn, please.
And that is the fundamental point of difference, is that you see no role for organised labour in our society. Well, we will agree to disagree on that, and we will bring forward legislation that protects the rights of workers in this Territory. And this democratic institution will vote on them. And if this institution supports those laws, they will become the laws of the Australian Capital Territory. And we, Madam Speaker, will be proud to have made a difference in the lives of working people in this city. And you lot are pursuing an ideological agenda against organised labour, and that explains why it is that you remain in opposition in this city.
Point of order. Mr Gentleman.
Madam Speaker, you've asked the opposition to calm down during question time a number of times today. You've directed your comments to particular members of the opposition. They continue to interject.
They do
so
indeed.
loudly, Madam Speaker, that we can't hear the answer over.
Thank you, Mr Gentleman. I was going to wait until that. Mr Coe, I don't appreciate that. It has been particularly loud. Perhaps you have company in the chamber and that's what's driving you, but very soon I'll be starting to issue warnings because it is getting a little bit out of control. Let's go to another question without notice. Ms Orr.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Housing and Suburban Development. Minister, can you update the Assembly on the outcome of the ACT Housing and Homelessness Summit held last week in Canberra?
Minister for Minister Berry. The noise has distracted me. Miss Berry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And the Housing and Homelessness Summit that was held last Tuesday on the 17th of October came at the end of a 7-week consultation period where the government received over 6,000 interactions from individuals around building a new housing strategy in the ACT. The summit, I was personally very pleased with how the summit went. It was a lot different to any kinds of summits that I'd attended, and the feedback so far from participants was that they enjoyed the interactive elements and the process that was conducted during the summit. And many of those who attended had already been part of the consultation leading up to the summit and were happy that their input in the lead-up was being considered and discussed during the summit with a whole bunch of different stakeholders. A lot of the items and information will be collated, and there have been a number of new and innovative ideas that have been shared and discussed already. One of the most valuable aspects of the summit was the opportunity for networking across all community sectors and the realisation that everybody had something to contribute to help improving housing outcomes for some of the most disadvantaged members of our community. In fact, it was one of the opportunities that was highlighted to me was the chance for people to have conversations with people who are actually building homes, developers who might be interested in building an affordable housing product, having conversations that they would never have had the chance to do before had they not been brought together in a different environment and had the chance to talk about have a conversation about building a new housing strategy for the ACT. And so I want to thank the Canberra community for being part of the conversation so far.
Supplementary, Ms Orr.
Minister, what is the significance of the diversity of voices that were heard at the summit?
Minister for Housing and Suburban Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, it was, as I said, it was a great opportunity to explore and further investigate some of the suggestions that had already been raised in the conversations leading up to the summit. And the government wants proposals that come forward to be highly collaborative, co-design approaches, and that is certainly what I saw coming out of the summit. And by raising awareness of the issues and encouraging ownership of some of the issues within the community and the opportunities for improvement, a true collaboration between government, business and the community sector continued to be the priority and the conversation that I was part of and heard during the summit last week. And the participants at the summit were representative of some 125 different organisations that had participated in the community consultation so far. The summit really was a great example of Canberra being a socially inclusive community and of the government's desire to work with and for all Canberrans.
Supplementary, Ms Cody.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. How will the announcements you made at the summit contribute to addressing housing and homelessness challenges facing the ACT?
Minister for Housing and Suburban Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, as I said all the way leading up to the summit, that I wanted this to be a genuine conversation with the community and to engage as many different voices who might not ordinarily have the chance in having a conversation about building a housing strategy for the ACT. And so it was never the government's intention to make a big, shiny announcement without having that genuine conversation in the first place. So the $1 million innovation fund that I did announce on the day will seed some of the new affordable housing initiatives and support new partnerships among community housing services, real estate, design and within the construction sectors. The government committed to improving and expanding the way it releases land for affordable and public and community housing, and for the remainder of the 2017-18, the 530 sites that will be released for affordable home purchase and public and community housing, a combined increase of 240 sites on what the previous affordable housing policy would have yielded. Also, with the establishment of the affordable home purchase database, this will ensure that these blocks go where they are most needed and that the release of affordable land is fair and equitable. That's why future affordable housing home purchases will be made available only to households who pre-register on the new ACT government database.
Questions without notice? Ms Lauder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question's to the Treasurer. Administrative Arrangements 2017 number 1 and Section 63 of the City Renewal Authority and Suburban Land Agency Act 2017 legislatively require you to make directions on acquisition thresholds for the City Renewal Authority and the Suburban Land Agency. Treasurer, why has there been a significant delay in issuing directions on acquisition thresholds for the two authorities since they were established on 1 July 2017?
Chief Minister.
There hasn't been, Madam Speaker.
Supplementary, Ms Lauder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Treasurer, what governance arrangements are in place for acquisitions, given there are no thresholds issued?
Treasurer.
Acquisitions, Madam Speaker.
Supplementary. Mr Coe.
Treasurer, why is the issuing and implementation of acquisition threshold directions not been a priority given the ongoing issues with your government's land acquisitions and the Auditor-General's inquiry?
Treasurer.
I refer the member to my previous answers, Madam Speaker.
Mr Hanson, question without notice.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. And my question is to the Chief Minister. In question time yesterday, you admitted to being confused about a brief you signed on the 7th of November 2015 regarding the Aquis Casino redevelopment. Chief Minister, what further advice have you received from your directorate about the briefing and the rights of Aquis in relation to the land surrounding Glebe Park since you signed the briefing on the 7th of November 2015?
Chief Minister.
Aquis have no rights in relation to that block, Madam Speaker. It was an error in the brief.
Supplementary, Mr Hanson.
Chief Minister, why did you not seek clarification prior to signing the briefing on the 7th of November 2015?
Chief Minister.
Because, as I said, I assumed that the section number was the same, that the block referred to the adjacent block, that the adjacent block...
Mrs Dunn, can you let the Chief Minister answer the question without an interruption, please?
But in the end, Madam Speaker, Aquis have no rights in relation to that block. None whatsoever.
Supplementary, Lauder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Chief Minister, did you receive written advice that Aquis have no rights? Who provided that advice and when?
Chief Minister.
Well, no rights were ever given. No rights were ever given. No rights were ever given, Madam Speaker.
Are there questions without notice? Ms Lee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Chief Minister. You're popular today, Chief Minister. In August 2016, you said you were, quote, not aware of any proposals, end quote, by Aquis regarding the development of the Glebe Park site. It has since come to light that Aquis briefed you and other senior public servants on the 21st of May 2015 about their plans to expand the casino, which included the acquisition of land at Glebe Park. Chief Minister, why did you say you were not aware of any proposals relating to Glebe Park after you were specifically briefed by Aquis about their expansion plans well over a year prior to that?
Chief Minister.
Well, as I think is very clear, Madam Speaker, there are two blocks in Glebe Park.
It wasn't very clear when I signed
there are two blocks. There are two blocks, Madam Speaker. Aquis has rights over one of them, as did the previous casino owner. The other block, Madam Speaker, does not. Aquis have no rights over, but they do have rights over the block that is adjacent at the back of the convention centre. They purchased those rights when they purchased the casino from the previous owner. But in the end, Madam Speaker, the government is continuing a process of assessing the unsolicited proposal from the casino. This place will consider legislation in due course.
Would you resume your seat? Point of order.
On relevance, Madam Speaker, the question was, why did you say that you were unaware of proposals relating to Glebe Park when you were specifically briefed about their expansions? The question is not about Aquis's rights to a block, one block or another, or whether or not there is an unsolicited proposal out there. The question was simply, why did you say that you were not aware of proposals?
Chief Minister, you might be able to provide clarity.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, if one were to go and look at the block and section maps, there is a narrow section immediately behind the convention centre that could or could not be argued to be part of Glebe Park. And then there is Glebe Park, as we understand it, that stretches around to the Canberra Centre. The casino has rights over a narrow section. The area, when I was being asked the question, relates to a different block of land that they have no rights over, Madam Speaker.
Supplementary, Ms Lee.
Thank you, Ms Speaker. Chief Minister, will you provide the Assembly with the dates and minutes of meetings between government officials and Aquis about their land development and gaming machine proposals?
Chief Minister.
Well, to the extent that that information can be quickly compiled, Madam Speaker, I will do so in the fullness of time.
Supplementary, Mr Coe.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Chief Minister, will you provide to the Assembly any written advice that you have received in recent weeks regarding the confusion about the block and section that you signed off on in the brief.
Chief Minister.
I believe any written advice exists, Madam Speaker. I have ascertained, because there was no decision ever taken to grant any rights. So in the absence of the granting of any rights, I can presume, Madam Speaker, given no rights have been granted, to grant that any rights were granted, Madam Speaker. There are no documents that exist to that effect, and I will check the record as to whether that particular error in terms of the block, in terms of whether the block and section has been formally corrected. I will check that with the agency. But in the end, Madam Speaker, Mr Coe's grand conspiracy is that rights were granted. They never were. There are no rights over that block. End of case. There will be a consideration of an unsolicited proposal by the casino. You lot have completely reversed your position in relation to both the casino, investment in Canberra, and indeed economic development. And yes, the government has changed its position. And you guys have just gone and flipped and taken the exact opposite. In 2013, you were asking questions in this place. In 2013, you were asking questions in this place about why the casino didn't have poker machines. How unfair that was. And that has been the Liberal Party policy position up until you were bought off by Clubs ACT.
New question.
I'm glad you brought them to silence, Mrs Jones. You
Yes,
can ask
I have
your
quite a voice.
question without notice.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, my question is for the Treasurer. Treasurer, I refer to an article by former Chief Minister John Stanhope in the City News of 19th of October. He stated, any analysis of data on the cost of living and trends in household disposable income will show just how much stress households in the bottom income quintiles are suffering. What contributions are ACT government policies making to the income stress suffered by low-income households in the bottom income quartile?
Treasurer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, the government recently reformed our concessions program in order to deliver more concessions and benefits to that bottom income quintile. That income quintile is not in home ownership predominantly, and in fact are in the public housing system or in private rental overwhelmingly. The vast majority, their housing needs, this is the bottom quintile, their housing needs are met by public housing, and the government, in changing our concession scheme to deliver a greater level of concession to those in the rental market, particularly the private rental market, has in fact assisted those most disadvantaged. We continue, Madam Speaker, to provide additional supports and concessions right across the suite of ACT government service provision. Of course, there's an interaction between state and territory governments and the Commonwealth Government in relation to income support for the lowest income quartile in our community, and it is, of course, always pleasing to see, Madam Speaker, when there are increases, for example, to pensions and to welfare payments, and it would seem, Madam Speaker, that those opposite their colleagues are being particularly tough on welfare recipients and pensioners in their budgetary policy, including some of the most extraordinary interventions in relation to income management and questions of drug testing as well, Madam Speaker.
Mrs Jones, supplementary.
Minister, what analysis does ACT Treasury do on the impact of government tax policies on lower income households and in particular those who are trying to own homes?
Treasurer.
Well, I would refer the member firstly to the concessions review that was undertaken last year, and also to the ACT taxation review and the 5-yearly update in relation to the taxation review that goes to the heart of the question that she asked. But I can also be very clear that in any context, any rational assessment of public policy positions, both in the territory and nationally show that if you want to look after and you want to ensure that low-income people are supported in our community, you must have progressive governments in office.
Supplementary, Mr Coe.
Chief Minister and Treasurer, will you table all the Treasury analysis of the distributional impacts of the taxation measures that you have introduced as Treasurer?
Treasurer.
Those documents are available. I release them as part of the budget papers each year, cost of living statements, as well as the taxation review, the 5-yearly update, the concessions review. The ACT government does not have access to every piece of information regarding income in the territory as that is held nationally. But there are a number of documents that are publicly available. If Mr Coe or his office could get off their lazy backsides, they'd find it publicly available.
Questions without notice. Mrs Dunn.
Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Health and Wellbeing. Minister, has the Centenary Hospital for Women and Children been asked to find an efficiency dividend or any form of cost saving? And if so, how much?
Minister for Health and Wellbeing.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank Mrs Dunn for the question. Certainly not to my knowledge and certainly not at my request.
Supplementary, Mrs Dunn.
Does this mean, Minister, that you have been unbriefed on this matter? And to what extent would finding an efficiency dividend or other form of cost saving stretch the already stretched Women's and Children's Hospital, particularly the maternity section?
Minister for Health and Wellbeing.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would certainly expect to be briefed by my department if that was the case, but as I indicated, they have not. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Centenary Hospital for Women and Children is indeed a busy place. As Mrs Dunn noted yesterday, I'd like to thank her office for forwarding me the information that she referenced during yesterday's question time, and I will provide further advice. It is certainly not been at my direction.
Supplementary, Mrs Jones.
Minister, with regard to the efficiency dividend or any other form of such that may be requested or may have been requested, does the method of housing women in the same room that they give birth have anything to do with the busyness of that place at the moment?
Minister for Health and Wellbeing.
Thank you. I've already answered the assumption that is made in Mrs Jones's supplementary, so I have no further comment to make on the question.
Questions without notice, Ms Cody.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Transport and City Services. Minister, how is the ACT Government preparing the Transport Canberra bus network for the introduction of light rail and an integrated public transport system from late 2018?
Minister for Transport and City Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank Ms Cody very much for the question, and indeed 2018 is a very big year for public transport in Canberra. As well as delivering the first stage of Canberra's light rail network, the Barr Labor government is delivering on our election commitment to expand the rapid bus network 2 years ahead of schedule, with 9 rapid routes ready to connect Canberra's commuters from next year. I was very pleased to announce the early delivery of our rapid bus network at the official opening of the new Dixon Interchange last week. In just over a year, it will be a very busy place in the heart of one of Canberra's locations of urban renewal, as people travelling to and from work or study or out with their family and friends hop on to the bus or the light rail just across the road. The interchange already provides a hub for bus users and travel centred on Dixon, and will be fully functional as a transfer station for both bus and light rail travel when the Dixon light rail stop is operational late next year. As we know, the first stage of light rail will free up 1 million bus kilometres of travel, and we're putting those to work to deliver a faster and easier bus network that will reduce congestion and protect our livability as our city continues to grow. We are delivering a complete redesign of our bus network to deliver a faster and easier 7-day-a-week service for everyone in Canberra. Our upgraded network will revolutionise the way people use public transport in Canberra, help to take cars off the road and increase public transport patronage across the city. The new integrated transport network will operate 7 days a week across 9 rapid routes. Rapid buses will connect town centres, suburbs and the city, forming the backbone of Canberra's future integrated transport network. Rapids will run at least every 15 minutes along core transport corridors from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Friday. Some of the key features of the expanded rapid network include all 9 rapid services will be up and running in 2018. More Tuggeranong and Belconnen commuters will receive rapid services 2 years ahead of schedule. For Tuggeranong, in addition to the recent expansion of the Blue Rapid to Lanyon, a new rapid will operate from Lanyon to the city
Time
via
has
Erindale.
expired, Minister. Supplementary, Ms Cody.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, what improvements and new services will be implemented as part of an integrated public transport system for Canberra?
Minister for Transport and City Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The new rapids will offer a more frequent and direct services between town centres and suburbs, integrated with the light rail route under construction and that, of course, in planning with the Civic to Woden route. It will allow a seamless transition to connecting services. With 9 rapid routes in total, routes will be straighter and faster between key locations. Importantly, we will deliver what Canberrans have asked for, a better public transport network that runs 7 days a week. One of the major improvements to the 2018 network will be increased frequency and better connections, so Canberrans will be able to just turn up at a bus stop and go where they need to. The new rapid network means that more than half of all Canberra residents will be within 750 metres of a rapid bus service, an increase from 26% last year alone. Higher frequency and better connections also means passengers will see reduced waiting times when transferring between services. The fare system will ensure that people can transfer between services as well as between light rail and bus without paying any additional fares. With 9 rapid routes in total, that routes will be straighter and faster between town centres. The network will also be simpler and easier to understand. The current network is complicated, with over 90 routes travelling across the city and route numbering that can be difficult for users to understand. This includes having different route numbers on weekends. Under the new network, the bus you catch on the weekend will not have a different route number and it will not go a different way to get you to the same destination. Customers will be able to make the same journeys 7 days a week. Madam Speaker, increased frequency, better connections and simpler routes are also a great benefit to visitors to Canberra. And we expect to see, of course, many more of those after today's announcement by Lonely Planet. They mean that visitors can more easily use the bus network to move around our city and be confident choosing routes to visit national institutions and attractions.
Supplementary, Ms Chang.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, how will Canberrans be able to have their say on these changes to the integrated public transport system, given they will impact the way they move around the city?
Minister for Transport and City Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, if Canberrans have already had significant input into the redesign of our transport network. Indeed, last year the ACT Government undertook an extensive consultation with Canberrans and asked them about their top priorities to encourage greater transport use. Our decision to accelerate the implementation of the rapid bus network follows the key findings of the survey and indeed, as the opposition has noted, the overwhelming response by the Canberra community to public transport in last year's election. More than 6,000 Canberrans responded during our consultation period and their priorities for public transport have informed our redesign. The survey identified the top 3 priorities to encourage greater public transport use across Canberra. They are faster trip times and more direct routes, more frequent and reliable services, and increased services at peak and off-peak times. We have redesigned the core rapid network based precisely on that feedback. Now we'd also like to hear from Canberrans about how they would like to connect to it, including through local buses, park and rides, active travel routes and more. We look forward to opening consultation this week and we'd encourage all Canberrans, those who currently use the network and particularly those who currently don't, to have their say. Staff from Transport Canberra will also be out and about across the city, speaking with current and potential users about how the network can best serve them. Canberrans will also be able to provide feedback through the Your Say website. Following this round of consultation, we will be back to speak with the community in early 2018 about the details of the proposed completed network. The final network will then be refined and delivered before the commencement of Stage 1 light rail services later in 2018.
Questions without notice? Ms. We've had the supplementary. Mrs. Kickert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Transport and City Services. Minister, it is reported that the dog that attacked and killed the person today has been reported as dangerous before. What do you know about the past reports about this dog?
Minister for Transport and City Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank Mrs Kickett for the question. And before I go to the detail of the question, I would of course like to note, as I know we all share in this place, my deepest condolences to the woman who has been killed overnight, to her family and friends, and wish the gentleman recovering in hospital now a speedy recovery. I know that there are many questions about this incident, but I also know that ACT Policing need to conduct an investigation. I have offered the opposition a briefing on that tomorrow, and I believe that they will be in a position to take that up. What has been reported in the Canberra Times, if that is the reference that Mrs Kickett makes, is that previously Domestic Animal Services did attend that household. I am advised on one previous occasion. What I said to the media was that this dog was clearly a dangerous dog because a woman has died. What I do not know is if any authorities had enough information prior to events yesterday to declare that dog dangerous.
Supplementary, Mrs Kickett.
Thank you. Minister, what orders or controls were placed on this dog?
Minister for Transport and City Services.
None to my knowledge. And as I say, ACT Policing need to conduct an investigation. They need to have all the facts on the table.
Supplementary, Mr Coe.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, is it true as reported, and I quote, a dog that killed a woman in a Canberra home overnight had bitten another person in the months leading up to the attack?
Minister for Transport and City Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I indicated, Domestic Animal Services, I understand at the request of ACT Policing, attended the same residence as the incident overnight, and I understand at that time there was an injury to another person at that location and also an injury to the dog. I would note that from my brief reading of that article, not all that information has been provided to the government that is mentioned in the Canberra Times article. I understand there are questions. Mr Coe will be offered a briefing, has been offered a briefing tomorrow, and I think it would be prudent on all of us to allow ACT Policing to undertake their important work to gather the facts so that they can make a report to the coroner. And Mr Coe has been offered a briefing tomorrow, and I understand he will be very pleased to take that up. And facts that are currently known that can be shared will be provided in that briefing tomorrow.
Thank you. Questions without notice. Ms Chain.
Yes, there is. Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Minister for Police and Emergency Services. Could the Minister please update the Assembly on progress to install automatic external defibrillators, or AEDs, in frontline vehicles across the Emergency Services Agency?
Minister for Police and Emergency Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank Ms Shane for her question and her interest in safety across our community. Automatic external defibrillators, or AEDs, are being rolled out to ACT Rural Fire Service and State Emergency Service vehicles as part of a joint ACT Government and Federal Government initiative under the Natural Disaster Resilience Program. This boost means that all ACT Emergency Services vehicles will be fitted with AEDs, providing life-saving equipment to our professional staff and volunteer services. Once the rollout has been completed, all ESA frontline emergency vehicles across the 4 services will be fitted with AEDs. Over time, this could result in the saving of many lives with the assistance of our emergency service staff and volunteers. The recent rollout has included 68 AEDs being installed in rural fire service vehicles and 23 in state emergency service vehicles, seeing a total of 91 additional AEDs available for use by our emergency responders. I was recently able to inspect the installations and updates to the current fleet at the ESA headquarters. I also recently attended the International Restart a Heart Day event at ESA Training Centre. Both events were a great opportunity to remind Canberrans to find out more about AEDs and CPR procedures. The inclusion of AEDs on all frontline vehicles is just one of the improvements the ACT Government has made to the resources available to the Emergency Services Agency to assist them in protecting and saving the lives of Canberrans.
Supplementary, Ms Chan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Minister please advise what training is provided to ESA's staff and volunteers in the use of AEDs?
Minister for Police and Emergency Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank Ms Shane for her supplementary. All ESA staff and volunteers undertake training to a high standard. This training is aimed at keeping our emergency services personnel safe and providing effective and immediate assistance to the community in any circumstances. AEDs are designed to be user-friendly and training in their use is covered in all basic first aid courses. All ESA frontline responders receive training at first aid and CPR, which includes the use of AEDs and the ability to direct others to use them. One of the benefits of AEDs is that they can be operated by anyone, including members of the public with limited first aid training if the situation demands it. ESA members are provided training in incident management, so in cases where it's necessary to instruct or assist members of the general public, they can do so in a professional and efficient manner.
Supplementary, Mr Steele.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Minister please inform the Assembly how these additional devices add to ESA's existing stock of AEDs?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank Mr Steele for his question. The upgrade adds to the existing stock of AEDs already installed on ACT ambulance and ACT fire and rescue vehicles. The extension of AEDs to all state emergency service and ACT rural fire service vehicles will mean that an AED is equipped in every frontline emergency service agency vehicle. These upgrades are part of the ACT Government's continuous review of the equipment and resources available to our emergency services. It represents our commitment to ensuring Canberrans continue to live in safety and with the peace of mind to know their emergency services are well equipped and trained. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind Canberrans to take a look at the ESA website, download the emergency app. It could save your life or the life of a loved one.
Thank you, Minister. Chief Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. All further questions can be